Hello, my name is Sharon Sarago, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a strange feature about prepositional phrases. Now, we've covered prepositional phrases before when we started subject-verb agreement, but I was just simply showing you what prepositions were and what prepositional phrases were, but we didn't talk about their uses. Actually, prepositional phrases have other names. They can be called adjective phrases and also adverb phrases. It's very rare that we call those names anymore, and so it feels like it's forgotten knowledge to me because I never hear about teachers talking about it that way. But the fact is that when we use prepositional phrases as an introductory element, that means when they introduce the sentence, there are certain rules that we have to adhere to, and they seem a little bit strange. So I want to take a look first of all at prepositions just to remind you what they are, and at prepositional phrases, and then I want to get right into those weird rules about prepositional phrases if they introduce the sentence. I've named this prepositions and their strange comma rules because they really are kind of strange. Let's look at some of them. Well, first of all, you know that the definition is rather strange. A preposition is a word that shows a relationship to another word in the sentence. Really? So subjects and verbs show relationships. Adjectives show relationships. So I don't understand what in the world this definition means, but that's what we're stuck with. It's a word that shows a relationship to another word in the sentence. I guess if you're looking at the picture of a cat and a tree, then you might see that there's some sort of relationship. So if I had a little tree right here, and I had a cat underneath it, or a facsimile thereof, little cat, then it looks like he's frowning because of that definition, doesn't it? So anything that this cat can do to the tree in terms of a spatial relationship would be a preposition. So he could be under it, he could be below it, he could go on top of it or above it, he could go inside. So that's a relationship. Actually, a lot of these prepositions show that. Near, under, by the tree, inside the tree, outside, below, above, on top. So some of these words will talk about a spatial relationship, but not all of them. So let's see what else we have. Here we're going to learn about prepositional phrases. So a prepositional phrase will always begin with the preposition. That's probably the most important thing for you to know, because when you memorize the prepositions, then you'll at least know where it starts, and it will end with the first noun after it. So now you know the whole extent of it. So when you look at this example here, we start with this preposition and we go to the first noun after it, and that's your prepositional phrase. Into the doghouse. But what we're about today is prepositional phrases that introduce a sentence. We call them introductory elements. Here you can see a prepositional phrase. After dinner, you can fold the towels. Another one, throughout the events of the evening. We have two of them together here. Under here, under the bed in Jerry's room. All of those are introductory prepositional phrases. The strange thing, though, is that some of those have commas and some of them don't. And you have to wonder why. They're all prepositional phrases. They all introduce the sentence. So it's kind of curious why some of them have commas and some of them don't. This is where those strange rules come in. There's 3 of them, and we actually have to learn what they are so that we will know how to handle those introductory prepositional phrases. First of all, if it consists of 5 words or more, you must have a comma after it. So, of course, the opposite of that is true. If it has less than 5 words, then you don't have to have it. You can if you want to. There won't be anything wrong with it, but it's not required. If it's 5 words or more, it is required. So here's an example. Without the money his mother had given him. All of this is a long prepositional phrase that has another clause attached to it, but it's still a prepositional phrase. And how many words do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have to have a comma there if it's 5 words or more. Right here, 5 words or more. Here's another example. Until tomorrow, we won't know our grades. Well, here's our introductory prepositional phrase, but it's only 2 words. Now, you can put a comma there if you want to and say until tomorrow, stop for a while, whatever, and put a comma, but you don't have to do it. It is not necessary to put the comma there if it's not 5 words or more. That's rule number 1. Let's take a look at rule number 2. This one says 2 or more introductory prepositional phrases that are joined together must be followed by a comma. So, look what we have. We have one right here from the top shelf, and then we have another one right here of the bookcases. And there's the comma. We do not have a choice here. If it has 2 or more introductory phrases, you have to have that comma there. Here's another one. Until tomorrow at noon. Well, this has only 4 words in it, but you have 2 prepositional phrases, until tomorrow and at noon. And because there's 2 of them joined together and introducing this sentence, we have to have that comma. All right, we're down to rule number 3. This is the really strange one. If the verb comes immediately after the introductory prepositional phrase, the comma is not necessary. Well, you don't often hear sentences like this in our spoken language. You see them in print a lot, but people don't talk this way. You're going to have to know it on the test, though, because it'll show up. Let's look at it. Under the tree, that's one. In our front yard is another. So we have 2 of them. You would think you have to have a comma. And look how many words there are. Looks like 7 words here. And you would think we have to have a comma. However, the verb of this sentence immediately follows this, and therefore we don't put a comma there. Under the tree in our front yard sat the black cat. Well, we would say, under the tree in our front yard, the black cat sat, maybe, but even that sounds weird. All right, look at the next one. Inside the old barn were 3 pigeons. Well, if those are the only words that we have, we couldn't say inside the old barn 3 pigeons were. So we have an introductory prepositional phrase followed immediately by the verb. Therefore, we do not put a comma there. Now, you might be wondering why we would even bother to start sentences with prepositional phrases. The reason for that is that you have to write an essay. And your essay is graded in part on how you begin sentences. They call that a variety of sentence structures. If you start all your sentences with the subject, they will grade you down on it. So, starting with prepositional phrases is a good way to get some variety into your sentence structures. Okay, we've had our 3 rules. Let's see how we do on a test. What we're going to do here is try to see if we can put the commas in the right place. There's only 3 rules that you have to remember. So let's see what we're going to do. Number 1, from the top row of the balcony, Okay, we know that we have introductory prepositional phrases. So let's look at the rules. We've got from the top row, that's 1, of the balcony, that's 2, and we have the subject that follows, not the verb. Therefore, we are required to put a comma after it for 2 reasons. It's more than 5 words, and there's 2 of them joined together. Next, in the corner of the room. All right, so we've got 2 of them. It's more than 5 words, so we're thinking that we need a comma. However, here comes the verb. And remember, if the verb is immediately after the prepositional phrases, you don't put a comma there. Next, with only a pen and paper, this is a long prepositional phrase. It's only 1, but it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. So we're thinking we might need a comma there. But here comes the verb immediately after that introductory prepositional phrase. Therefore, we do not want to put a comma there. Next, for the sake, that's 1, of your grades, that's 2. So one rule says if you've got 2 or more joined together, you have to have a comma. Another rule says if you've got more than 5 words, you have to have 1. So we're thinking we do. There's no verb after this, so we're free to go ahead and put our comma right there. And our last one, around the corner is 1, and down the street is another one. So it's long. We have 2 of them there. They are introducing the sentence. The verb doesn't come next, and therefore we would be able to put a comma here. So, as I told you earlier, in our spoken language, we don't put verbs right after the introductory prepositional phrase. It is something that's reserved for writing. It actually does sound very sophisticated. So when you're writing essays, this would be a real good thing for you to try. And just think about it. Try to put it in your essay sometimes. And our answers, of course, are always here. We had only a few questions here because we have only 3 rules there. You just have to remember them. The thing about these introductory prepositional phrases is that they are the only ones who have strange rules about whether or not you use a comma after they introduce the sentence. Everything else in our language requires a comma after it if it introduces the sentence. You can have an introductory word, you can have an introductory phrase, you have an introductory clause. It doesn't matter. If it introduces the sentence, you need to have a comma after it. Unfortunately, you see it incorrectly a lot of times because grammar seems to be taking the back seat lately. But it is on the SAT and it is on the ACT, and they do expect you to have it correct. So take a look at this. Try to incorporate it into your writing when you can. And if you just memorize those 3 little rules, it's not very hard at all. So I will see you on the next video. I know this is very short, and that's a good thing.